This is National Native News. I'm Antonia Gonzalez. Early voting for the November midterm elections opens today in Montana. Voting is expected to be easier for those who live on one reservation with satellite election offices. Yellowstone Public Radio's Jackie Yamanaka explains.
The satellite offices are the result of a successful lawsuit against the state of Montana. The plaintiffs had argued reservation residents face greater hardships to in-person voter registration and voting because of the long traveling distances they face. Mark Wandering Medicine of Bernie was the lead plaintiff in that lawsuit.
I'm from the smallest and isolated community on Northern Cheyenne Reservation. We don't even have no store or nothing. And we had to travel all the way to Forsyth.
Or nearly 87 miles away. He says it could be an even longer trip in inclement weather, and many on the reservation already have a hard time with transportation. A settlement reached in 2014 was to open satellite election offices on the reservations. Then Montana Secretary of State Linda McCullough ordered counties to provide those satellite offices to ensure compliance with the Federal Voting Rights Act and ensure Native Americans can effectively participate in the electoral process.
Indian vote is to be reckoned with.
State Representative Sharon Stewart Paragoy of Crow Agency.
We are a block vote, we are a swing vote, and that we need to take that seriously. We need to understand that we need to educate our young people that in order to affect change, we have to make that change ourselves.
Stewart Paragoy says there are many issues facing the reservations, and the way to affect change is to vote. For National Native News, I'm Jackie Yamanaka.
Tribes and Native organizations across the country are vowing to fight for protections under the Indian Child Welfare Act after the Federal District Court for the Northern District of Texas ruled the law unconstitutional. The decades-old law is intended to keep Native children with Native families. Foster parents in 3 states sued the federal government over adoptions, claiming the law is race-based. Sarah Kostelic is the executive director of the National Indian Child Welfare Association, which is among organizations pledging support to stand up for the law.
In this case, the federal government and the intervening tribes will likely request a motion to stay the decision and to appeal the decision. And at NICWA, we would greatly support that appeal because this is really a momentous ruling for Indian child welfare. It essentially throws out hundreds of years of legal precedent.
Supporters of the law say before ICWA, it was standard practice to put Native children up for adoption with non-Indian families, which disconnected them from their culture and tribal communities. Those in opposition call the recent court decision a major victory, including attorneys for the Goldwater Institute, which is dedicated to fighting ICWA, including in Arizona, California, and Washington. Indigenous Peoples Day events were held across the country Monday as a number of cities moved to honor Indigenous people instead of celebrating the federal Columbus Day holiday. Los Angeles held its first official Indigenous Peoples Day, and in Flagstaff, Arizona, city leaders recognized its first Indigenous Peoples Day while also committing to work together with the Native community to address discrimination. Other cities also celebrated but focused on issues facing Native people. In Alaska, speakers discussed the need for greater protections for women and children who face high rates of abuse. And in Santa Fe, New Mexico, activities were held. This after the city recently abandoned a controversial pageant which highlighted Spanish conquistadors and instead chose to include the recognition of tribes with events through Indigenous Peoples Day. I'm Antonia Gonzalez.
National Native News is produced at the Annenberg National Native Voice Studios by Kawanak Broadcast Corporation. Funding is by Odawi Law Group, provider of Indian law solutions, and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, with support from the Public Radio Satellite System.
Support by AARP. AARP creates and connects people to unique tools and programs, helps conserve personal resources, and tackles issues that matter most to individuals, families, and communities. More at aarp.org.
And by the law offices of Sonosky, Chambers, Saxe, Miller, and Monkman, a national tribal rights law firm with offices in Washington, D.C., New Mexico, California, and Alaska, and online at sonosky.com.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.